For 25 centuries, sailors and scholars have tried to find one specific island using directions written into the world's most famous poem, and they kept failing, because the place described didn't seem to exist. In the Odyssey, Ithaca is described as low-lying, farthest out to sea toward the sunset, ringed by smaller islands. Anyone who actually sails to the island now called Ithaca off western Greece hits a problem immediately. It isn't the farthest island out. It isn't especially low. The geography around it doesn't match the poem at all. For a long time, the easy explanation was that the poet got it wrong, that Homer never set foot near Ithaca and was inventing landscapes from imagination. Then, in the early 2000s, a British researcher named Robert Bittlestone looked closer at the neighboring island of Kefalonia and noticed something strange in the rock. A section of it, the Peliki Peninsula, sits on a bed of loose limestone rubble hundreds of feet deep, the kind of debris field left by a massive ancient landslide. A Cambridge geologist, John Underhill, later confirmed the peninsula does sit on this unstable fill. The theory that followed is unproven, but genuinely startling. That Peliki was once its own island, separated from Kefalonia by a narrow channel, and that centuries of earthquakes and rockfall filled that channel in, welding two islands into one. If that's true, the Ithaca, described with such strange precision, may not have vanished from the map because a poet invented it. It may have vanished because the ground itself moved. That's the trap at the center of the Odyssey. Every time it seems safe to write off as fantasy, something underneath it turns out to be unsettlingly specific. The story itself pulls in two directions at once. At its spine, it's simple. A king named Odysseus fights a decade-long war at Troy, then spends another 10 years just trying to sail the few hundred miles home. That's the entire skeleton of the plot. The flesh on that skeleton is pure nightmare. He blinds a cannibal giant with one eye in the middle of its forehead. He sails past monsters who sing men to their deaths. He loses his crew one gruesome death at a time until he arrives home alone, disguised as a beggar in his own house, where over 100 men are trying to marry his wife and eat him out of house and home. And even the homecoming isn't simple. He doesn't walk through the front door as a returning king. He arrives disguised as a broken old beggar, and the first creature to recognize him isn't his wife or his son. It's his dog, Argos, who has waited 20 years and dies right after seeing him one last time. The next person to recognize him is an old servant washing his feet, who feels an old scar on his leg from a boar hunt in his youth and freezes. That's the strange rhythm of the whole poem. A god turns men into pigs one page, then a very ordinary scar gives away the whole plot the next. None of that sounds like history, so the question splits in two. Was there a real war at Troy for him to be coming home from? And is any part of the actual journey real? The first question got an answer in 1871, when a wealthy, obsessive amateur archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann started digging into a mound in northwestern Turkey called Hisarlik, convinced Homer's Troy was buried underneath it. He was right, in the most complicated way possible. Excavators found not one city, but at least 9, stacked directly on top of each other like the rings of a tree, spanning roughly 3,000 years. One layer, labeled Troy 7A, shows a city violently destroyed by fire around 1180 BCE. Bodies left unburied, weapons scattered through the rubble,